Thank you very much, Sherry Ann. My name is Dallas Squire. Very happy to be here today, and I want to give a shout out and a thank you to Sherry Ann, Jody, and Adam, and the rest of the crew for organizing this. I've been going into schools, which I love to do, but I also, look forward to the opportunity to sharing knowledge. And what's unique about doing an online presentation is there's a little bit more talking, right? When I'm there in person, we actually get to play the games. But for this part, I'm gonna show you some games, and we'll talk a bit more about them. So my business, again, as mentioned, is Onkwehonwe Games. Onkwehonwe in my language, in my Mohawk language, translates to original people. So it's original people games. And when I come into schools or when I do presentations, it's a bit of culture, history, and traditional games all kind of mixed together because the games that we play are connected to my culture. So I'm a Mohawk from Six Nations, and I'm part of the Turtle Clan family. And that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna talk and we're gonna learn today. And I'm gonna leave about 10, 15 minutes at the end of it for any questions you have, if you have any. Now, I always like to begin with explaining where Six Nations is located. I find that not often people even know where we're located. And when I ask that question, if anybody knows where we're located, I often get like some crazy answers in the United States and things like that. But no, Six Nations is located here in Ontario, and we are near the city of Brantford, And so we're not that far from you, right? And there's a river system that flows through Brantford called the Grand River. And that's where our people are located, on the banks of the Grand River, near Brantford. And I just like to explain that because I think it helps put things into perspective. I'm not traveling a great distance when I come into the schools, and we're very, very local, and as well as many other First Nations, but we'll talk about that in a bit. Now, the community of Six Nations is very unique. It's unique. We are unique because we are made up of six different nations. So, like Canada is considered a nation, United States is considered a nation. Six Nations is also six different nations living in one community. So that makes us very unique. Having different nations means we have six different languages within our community. Before French and English and any other language, we have six languages of our own. That is, again, very unique. Most other First Nations communities are made up of one, two, maybe three, but not six. So again, that makes us very unique. We are also unique because we are the most populated First Nations community in Canada. And our population, I would say around 14,000 within our community. So 14,000 people that can come from any of those Six Nations are within our community. Our membership, so that means our population, which is 14,000, plus people that live anywhere else in the world but are members of Six Nations, is well over 30,000. I would think 35,000 people. And that's huge. For a First Nations community, that is huge. Now, even though we are made up of six different nations, again, each nation with their own language, and we'll go through who those nations are in a bit. Even though we're made up of six different nations, we are still considered one community. And I'm going to throw out a question for you, and we can talk about this later, question and answer period. How many total First Nations are there in Canada? Not let me try that again. How many total First Nations communities, not people, but First Nations communities are there in Canada? That's your question for the end of the session. So Six Nations are very unique. We've had huge roles that we played throughout history. Now, I want to show you, I'm going to start off with this right here. This is quite important in our culture. Some of you may know what this is. It is called a wampum belt. And in our culture, Six Nations culture, traditionally, we did not really have a writing system. We never really had an alphabet. There's some debate about that, but I'm not aware of any alphabet that we had. So in order to keep track of special events and special times, special moments in history, we used symbols and pictures, right? And the important ones we made into wampum belts. And we have over 50 of these in our culture that each have their own individual story, right? And this is a great example of it because it can tell you a lot. This particular one is called the Hiawatha Wampum Belt. Hiawatha. Now you can see it's made up of beads. Excuse me. Now, traditionally, I'm talking hundreds of years ago, we never had a bead store, right? We couldn't cruise into a Michael's or wherever you buy beads and order beads. We had to make everything, right? Now, these beads were very special. They weren't made just from any material because we could have used like a bone or wood to make beads. But these particular beads, not this is a replica, but the beads that were used for wampum belts were made from shells called quahog shells. And these shells were found in the ocean. And so it took a considerable effort to gather shells and make them into beads. And we'll share why in a bit. Now, you'll see only 5 symbols on here, but yet we're called the 6 nations. So that is because originally we started with 5 nations. And a long, long time ago, we did not get along. These 5 nations, we had actually a terrible relationship. We did a lot of fighting, killing even went on between these nations. It was not nice. Hiawatha was a gentleman who was negatively affected by all of this. He lost family members, and but Hiawatha, he didn't want to keep the cycle of revenge going. You know, with the cycle of revenge, you do something to someone, they do something back, and it just continues. Hiawatha didn't want that. He wanted peace. And so he found some like-minded people, and they created a system of peace and unity, and they called it a confederacy system. They took this system to each of the 5 nations, and after considerable time and a lot of effort, these original 5 nations accepted that great peace, and it was called the confederacy system. So at that point, it became known as the 5-nation confederacy system. And this system was put in place a long time ago. And one of the dates that they have within our community is 900 CE. CE. Now, CE stands for Common Era. And I love to use Common Era more because it's inclusive of all belief systems. Once you get into using BC or AD, they speak to a specific belief system. So CE, or Common Era, is all inclusive because not everybody has the same belief system. So 900 CE, very old system of governance, or a governance structure, if you will, one of the first, if not the first known. And it was not a hierarchy system. So we never had a president or a prime minister or a king or a queen. It was about equalness and unity. And we'll talk more about that in a bit. Now, you'll notice, again, only 5 symbols on there. And this tree-looking symbol in the middle was known as the Tree of Peace. And it was said that once we accepted that great peace between these 5 nations, we buried our weapons underneath that Tree of Peace, never to use them against each other again. So very important symbolism for the Tree of Peace. It was said it was a white pine tree, a white pine tree. Now, this symbol is also considered a map of our original territory. Our original territory was not really near Brantford, right, like we are now. Originally, we came from what you know as United States, right? United States. Long before it was called the United States, or long before anybody even thought about it being the United States, the 6 Nations people were there for sure. And our territory started around the Niagara Falls area. I think it's important for me to note as well that we did not have borders. Borders are man-made borders, right? We never sit on this side of Niagara Falls, for example. You were American, and over here you were Canadian. That was not it's not our way, right? We never had borders. So our territory was kind of loosely around the Niagara region, and it traveled east all the way to a place called Albany, New York. And you'll have to get your teachers to show you on a map where that is. And it was a big area. I know it's called the Finger Lakes region. And each symbol on here is a nation within that territory. And my family, the Mohawk people, we'll say that's east, just for the sake of naming one side. We'll say that's east. My family, the Mohawks, came from the furthest east. Beside the Mohawk people were the Oneida, the Oneida. The Tree of Peace in the middle here are the Onondaga people. Beside them, we have the Cayuga, and right in Niagara Falls are the Senecas, the Seneca Nation. And that was the original 5 nations. And our territory, again, ran from Niagara, heading east towards the Atlantic Ocean. Not quite there, but towards the Atlantic Ocean. Now, these tabs at either end, you can see. I always get the question, well, where's Onondaga? Where's Tuscarora? So Tuscarora is the last nation to join, and they're represented by these tabs. But I always get asked, why does Tuscarora not have a symbol on here? Well, this original confederacy was created in 900, right? And these tabs were meant that anybody could come and join this system if they wanted to. So it wasn't until 1722 when Tuscarora came in, much, much later after it was originally developed, right? And so they have not been added to the Hiawatha belt. Now, maybe they will one day, maybe they will not be, but they are definitely represented by these tabs because it was always open for anybody to come and join. And so that's the 6 nations. To repeat them one more time, the Mohawk, Oneida, Onondaga, Cayuga, Seneca, and the Tuscarora was the last to join. And this bound us in peace. Again, the Tree of Peace in the middle. It's a really significant piece, but there's a little bit more to this. I'm going to quickly go over that because I think it's important. One of the reasons they're called a wampum belt. Now, wampum in our language, we never even had a word for wampum. The word wampum came because of the Wampanoag people. So the Wampanoag were another nation or group of First Nations people that lived along the Atlantic Ocean. And it was the Wampanoag people that taught the Haudenosaunee, or the 6 nations, about water. And it was believed that the Wampanoag people really believed that water had the ability to retain memory, to have a memory, to retain memory. And because the shells were formed in the water, it was believed the shells had the ability to retain memory as well. So the Wampanoag people taught the Haudenosaunee about the shells, who then made beads out of the shells and used the beads to make wampum belts because of the ability to retain memory. So a cool little story about where the name wampum came from, again, the Wampanoag people, and why the shells called coag shells were used to make beads. And it was because they had the ability to retain memory. So as you can see, wampum belts, and this is just one example, they tell you a lot about many different things, right? Some can be about agreements, like this one. Another popular one in my community is called the 2-row, which is just simply 2 rows going across, but it's about respect, peace, and unity. So there's a lot. If you ever hear the word wampum belts again, just know that they tell you a story. Now, I want to talk a little bit about land acknowledgements. I know those are popular. I know they vary from board to board on how much you do them or if you do them. And I know some boards are doing them every day. Some boards are doing them at assemblies. But land acknowledgements are a good piece to talk about because everybody's heard of them. And what they do is they acknowledge the territory or the land that you're on as being traditional territory of usually more than one First Nations group or nation, right? And I know in your area, it's the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe are usually the words that are included in your land acknowledgement. Now, some of my colleagues, some people that do similar work that I do, they're not very pleased with land acknowledgements. And one of the reasons is that they're words, right? and we would like some action to kind of back up those words. And I know the settings are difficult to do have that action, but um, I like land acknowledgements, right? I like them because it's something about Indigenous education, right? And I think we got to start slow, right, and learn something. So I use land acknowledgements as an opportunity to educate, right? So I just talked about two words, the Haudenosaunee and the Anishinaabe. Um, Not many people know what the word Haudenosaunee means, right? And I've been fortunate enough to do a lot of work with Adam and Jody and Sherry Ann that um, they know this information, quickly, and they do me proud every time I talk to them. But I think we need to hear things over and over again before it becomes second nature to learning. So I like to explain what Haudenosaunee means. In our language, it's a word that's used to describe ourselves. And Haudenosaunee translates into people of the longhouse. So our traditional homes were called longhouses, and they're made out of wood, and they're big and long. Again, you may have seen them in class or whatever online. But Haudenosaunee again translates to people of the longhouse, and it can also mean builders of the longhouse, but along the same lines. And again, that's talking about our traditional types of homes. The Anishinaabe in this area are generally made up of three groups. They are the Odawa, the Potawatomi, and the Ojibwe. And right beside the community of Six Nations, so our neighbors, is a group of people from the Mississaugas of the Credit. And Mississaugas are technically Ojibwe people, so they fall under the Ojibwe heading, and can be a bit confusing, but that's how it's laid out. So again, Haudenosaunee, people of the Longhouse; the Anishinaabe is the Odawa, the Potawatomi, and the Ojibwe. And so that land acknowledgement now has just given me an opportunity to share a bit more and bit more in depth of who those people are, right? Again, land acknowledgements for me are not always bad. Now, part of my presentations is games, right? My business is called Onkwehonwe Games. I make it my duty to try my best to educate people on who the Six Nations are, right? A little bit about our history, because the games that we play, they are all connected to the culture, right? Games in any culture are important, right? Games, right off provide the ability to work together and laugh. Laughter is huge, I think, in any culture. You can learn a lot from games, right? You can learn teamwork, sportsmanship, communication, strategy, right? Games teach you about your body as well, like physical games, your strength, your endurance. It promotes all of that stuff as well. But maybe it tells you a bit about yourself too. Maybe it tells you you need to work on your endurance, right? Or your speed or your accuracy. Like it really helps you. And so games are important in any culture. Now, in my culture, games complemented our lifestyle, right? We lived in harmony with nature, and we're extremely busy a lot of the times, right? And so games again provided that point of laughter, but it again also complemented our history because um, it wasn't an easy lifestyle living traditionally, right? Because we were always busy preparing for the next season ahead. And so games, they kept up our physical activity. It kept us sharp. It kept us in shape. I've had elders talk to me about how extremely healthy our ancestors were, right? Um, Elders would tell me that we never had a lot of diabetes or cancers, just really didn't exist. And games helped with that, right? Because it kept us active. So many other factors weighed in on why we are so healthy. A big one is the environment, right? The environment, the air we breathed a long time ago was even cleaner than it is now, right? We never had the cars and the factories. We never had the pollution. Our food was all natural, right? There was no chemicals sprayed on our food to keep weeds away or to help it grow. Everything was extremely natural. And that made our people healthy, extremely healthy. The air we breathed, the food we ate, the exercise we did was extremely healthy. I had elders tell me that because of our healthy lifestyle, we never had a lot of cancers, or diabetes didn't really exist. Um, Again, because of that lifestyle of the food we ate. And we were hunters as well, right? Hunters and gatherers. So we couldn't go to a McDonald's and get a Big Mac or anything like that. We had to order, or not order, we had to go and hunt our food. We couldn't order it. We had to hunt it. So that meant physically going out into the forest and catching your food. And then once you're catching it, you're preparing the food. And all of this done out of the utmost respect for the animals that we're hunting, right? We believe in our special relationship with animals, all living animals. And still today, when my friends are out hunting, again, we still hunt. And when we're out hunting, we'll give thanks for the animal, kind of similar to saying a prayer for the animal, because it's a living thing. And we're taught that we are all part of this living things, right? And so we give thanks for this animal before we take it. And once an animal is taken, yes, we use the animal to for sustenance, for meat and food. But out of respect for an animal, we try to use every part of the animal that we can, right? The hide, for example, could be used to make moccasins and jackets and blankets, whatever you can think of. There's no limits. Even the antlers and the hooves were used. We used to take them and hollow them out and put seeds inside of them, and you would have a rattle. Um, the intestines were used to make the sinew found on this wampum belt. So I think you get the picture of that. We try to use every part of the animal so that we're showing respect and it has purpose even after we've taken it. And that was a big part of our way of being, is having respect for all living things, and it contributed to our healthiness, right? Um, but so yeah, Six Nations people extremely healthy. Our lifestyle promoted health and wellness, right? And all of that stuff. And uh, today in modern times, much like not just in First Nations communities, much like other communities, though, you see a lot of cancers and diabetes um, nowadays, and it just didn't really exist that much a long time ago, and it had a lot to do with our lifestyle, right? Um, One of the myths about First Nations people as well is alcohol, right? Um, Alcoholism is everywhere, right? And not just in First Nations communities, it is everywhere. Traditionally, we never even had alcohol, right? That was not a thing. And again, it was one of the things that came later on. And because of not having alcohol, again, we were extremely healthy people. So yeah, I'm just going to leave that at that. Our lifestyle promoted health and wellness. Now, one of the other things I wanted to talk about, um, I wanted to share a story actually. I wanted to share quickly, and I know I'm running out of time, about our story of creation. Now, I like to share this story when I get a chance, because when I'm out in person in session, we often don't get a chance to hear this. But this story um, has games that are included in this story, right? And it talks about the importance of games in our culture. And so I'm going to share this quickly now. In our culture, it was said the stories were created to help people understand our connection to nature, right? And that's what this story does. And there are also many, many versions of this story. And this is my version. I've created a version to kind of fit in a short period of time. And there's a lot to it. And with stories, yes, you have to use your imagination. You have to use your imagination. And this will lead us into a couple games, which we'll end with. Now, in my culture, um, we believe we're an ancient culture. Ancient culture. We believe we've been here since the beginning of time, right? Our story about the beginning of all things, it's called the creation story, or the Sky Woman story, um, has this world, we'll call North America, um, as a water world. There was no land, there was just water, right? And we believed in a sky world. And in this water world, there were freshwater animals and birds, big winged birds, right? And again, the sky world is what we believed in. It was a beautiful place in the sky world. It was much like Earth is right now, minus the technology. We never had the buildings and the trucks and the factories and stuff like that. It was a natural place. Sky world was beautiful, and in Sky world of Sky Woman, And Sky Woman was kind of the leader of the family, if you will. And one day they were outside working, doing their gardening and stuff like that, when it became very windy. And it became so windy so quick that it was difficult for Sky Woman to stand up. And she thought, well, we can't work in this. Let's go back into our longhouse and we'll wait the storm out. So that's what they did. Everybody went into the longhouse and they waited and they waited and they waited and they waited until early evening. And the winds were still very bad. Actually, they're getting a little bit worse. And so it was an easy decision for Sky Woman to say, let's just stay in the longhouse for tonight and maybe tomorrow will be better. And that's what they did. And then evening time came and everybody was trying to go to sleep. And they found that difficult to do as well because it was so windy. They could hear all of the stuff blowing around outside. And they eventually fell asleep. Now, in the morning, Sky Woman was the first one to wake up. So she sat up and she listened, right? Because when she went to bed, she could hear all this noise. So she listened. And that morning it was silence. It was eerily silent, right? No wind, no noise. The birds weren't even singing, right? So Sky Woman thought that was interesting. And being curious, Sky Woman gets out of bed and she thinks, I'm going to go check this out, see what's going on. So she goes to the door of the longhouse and she opens it up and she's looking around and she could see different things blowing around and things moved. And off in the distance, she's seen this huge white pine tree tipped over. Now, if you've ever seen a pine tree tipped over, you know that the roots, they can go down deep and they can, when it tips over, it can pull out a big chunk of the ground or the earth with it. And that's exactly what happened. This tree tipped over and the roots pulled up a lot of the dirt, leaving a big hole, a giant hole in the ground where the tree once stood. And from within this hole, there was something shiny, extremely shiny. It was a shininess that Sky Woman had never seen before. And she was very curious. So she thought, I'm going to go check this out. So Sky Woman starts walking towards this hole in the ground, towards this shiny object. And the closer she gets, the more confused she is. Now, she finally makes it to the base of the hole. So she's looking down into the hole at this shiny object. Still doesn't know what it is. Now, at that point, Sky Woman's thinking, you know what? I'm going to go down there. I'm going to grab that shiny thing. I'm going to take it back to our longhouse. Surely somebody will know what this is, right? So she gets on her hands and knees and crawls down and she reaches out to grab this shiny object. But it was not an object. It was a hole, a literal hole to this world here. And the shiny thing was the sun reflecting off the water. And it was something that, again, Sky Woman had never seen coming out from the ground like that. And so because there was nothing physical for her to grab, it was just a beam of light. When she reached out to grab, all of her momentum was leaning forward and she fell through the hole. Right now, Sky Woman didn't want to fall through the hole. So she's just trying to reach up and grab at anything before she falls through. And in one hand, she grabs a wild strawberry plant. Now, excuse me. In my culture, Six Nations culture, strawberries are very important. We use them in all of our ceremonies. So when we go to ceremonies, you're going to see strawberry juice. You're going to see strawberries laid out for eating. They're always used in our ceremonies. So an important thing, she had the strawberries. In the other hand, she reaches out and grabs a wild tobacco plant. Now, in our culture, we use natural tobacco in ceremony, not the kind for cigarettes, nothing like that. This tobacco is a natural tobacco and it's used in ceremony, and we burn the tobacco. And our belief is that the smoke created from burning the tobacco carries up our thoughts and prayers up to the Creator. So two important things Sky Woman had in her hands: strawberries and the tobacco. But still, she's flailing away in this world here, falling through the sky. And if you remember, I said there were big winged animals there, the birds, like the hawk, the heron, and the eagle, and the goose. And they want to help her. So what they do is they each grab a limb. Now they're lowering Sky Woman down towards the water, right? Gently, which is her next problem, the water. So in the water, some of the water animals are popping up and they're looking up and they see the birds lowering Sky Woman down. And they have a lot of questions, right? They don't know what to do. And they realize that this being lowered probably can't breathe underwater. She probably cannot swim long enough to stay afloat. So what are we going to do, right? They don't know what to do. But yet, Sky Woman's coming closer and closer. And that's when a turtle pokes its back out of the water, and then it pokes its head out of the water. And the turtle says, you know what? I've been listening. I don't know what to do either. But until we figure this out, put her on my back. So that's exactly what they do. They gently lower Sky Woman to the back of the turtle. Now, as soon as Sky Woman touches down on the back of the turtle, she stands up and says, "Take me home. I want to go home right now." But the big winged animals have to tell Sky Woman, we're sorry. We don't know where you came from. We can't fly any higher than that. That's as high as we can fly, and we can't help you. I'm sorry. Now, Sky Woman is, doesn't know what to do. No, the water animals, they can't help her. They don't even know where Sky Woman came from, so they're not much help either. So they all get conversing. They all get chatting, communicating, talking amongst themselves, trying to figure out how can we help this Sky Woman. And that's at the point when an owl comes and lands on the back of the turtle, and owls are known to be wise. And the owl says to everybody, underneath the water, there's something that can help. And then the owl quickly takes off. So now he's left everybody with that bit of information that underneath the water, there's something that can help. That's a problem though. The winged animals, the birds, they've never been underneath the water, so they can't even weigh in on the story. And the water animals, it was a problem for them too because nobody ever swam to the bottom, so they didn't even know this bottom was a thing, right? They never had to go that deep. They never needed to, and so that was a problem. Now, once again, they're all talking amongst themselves, the birds and the water animals, the Sky Woman, trying to figure out what to do with that information, but what to do at all, right? And nobody has any good ideas right away. And that's when an otter jumps up, and the otter says, "Hey, you know what? How about I try swim to the bottom? If there is a bottom there, surely I can make it, and I'll see what's down there." And Sky Woman says, "You know what? It sounds great. Just please be careful." So otter gets a running jump off the back of the turtle. He dives into the water, and he's quickly gone out of sight. And he's gone. 10 minutes goes by, no sign of the otter. 5 more minutes goes by, so 15, and still no sign of the otter. Now Sky Woman's getting a bit worried, right? And she doesn't want anything bad to happen. But when she starts to worry like that, that's when the otter shoots out of the water, lands on the back of the turtle, and the otter hunches over, out of breath, and he says, "There's nothing there. I've never swam that deep in my life. I've never made it. I never made it there. I'm sorry." And Sky Woman, she's not upset. She just tells the otter that it's okay. Come on over and we'll think of something else. So they're all conversing amongst themselves, trying to figure out their next move. When a beaver jumps up, and the beaver says, "Hey, can I try to swim down? I have this big tail. Maybe I can swim further." Right? Sounds like a great idea to Sky Woman. So she says, "Yes, just please be careful." So beaver, it's a running jump. Off he goes. His big tail quickly disappears into the water, and he's gone. 10 minutes goes by. 15 minutes goes by. 20 minutes goes by. No sign of the beaver. Now, again, that's longer than the otter went down. Sky Woman was kind of starting to panic, right? She goes, "Oh my gosh, I hope he's okay." But like last time, when she starts to kind of panic, the beaver shoots out of the water, lands on the back of the turtle, and leans on his tail. And he says, he's all out of breath. And he says, "There's nothing there. I'm sorry. I've never swam that deep in my life. There's nothing there." And so he didn't make it. Now, Sky Woman again doesn't get mad. She just says, "It's okay. Come on over. We'll think of something else." So again, all the birds and the water animals are talking, conversing with Sky Woman, trying to figure out a move to help her out. And that's when a muskrat jumps up. And I'm not sure if you've ever seen a muskrat. Some people have, some people haven't. They do exist here in Ontario. And the best way that I can explain what a muskrat looks like is a rat of the water, a rat of the water. So this muskrat jumps up and says, "Hey, can I go?" And he's not very big. He's not big like an otter. He doesn't have a tail like a beaver. And so Sky Woman kind of looks at him and she says, "You know what? It's a dangerous mission. We've already sent our best swimmers down. How about you just come on over and we think of something else?" So she tells him no, she doesn't want him to go. Now Muskrat, he doesn't like that answer, right? And he says, "Hang on, hang on, hang on. I know I'm not big like an otter. I know I don't have a tail like a beaver, but what you cannot see are my lungs. I think I can hold my breath longer than they can. Please let me try," right? He's very persistent, and really wants to go so bad. And so after some thought, Sky Woman finally agrees, and she says, "Fine, just please be careful." And so it's decided the muskrat's going to go. So he gets a running jump. Off he goes, quickly swims out of sight, very fast swimmer. And now they wait again, right? 10 minutes goes by, 15 minutes goes by, 20 minutes goes by, 25 minutes goes by, and there's no sign of the muskrat. He's gone. Now, Sky Woman's feeling terrible, sad. Um, so she asks everybody, can you please look in the water to see if there's any sign of the muskrat? And so people are looking in the water or the animals and over the back of the turtle to see if there's any sign of them. Some are about swimming in the water trying to see if there's any sign of the muskrat. And after another 5 minutes goes by, somebody points down and they said, I think I see something. It's really deep in the water and it's not moving. I don't know what it is. But it is a figure. And so they decide to send down the otter and the beaver to check it out, right? They're the best swimmers. So down they go very quickly. And twice as fast as they're gone down, they're hauling um, back up out of the water, dragging this figure onto the back of the turtle. And it was, in fact, the muskrat, who was lifeless, was not breathing. At this point, everybody forgot why he went down, why the muskrat went down. It didn't matter why the muskrat went down. They just wanted him to live because that was their friend, right? And so they start working on the muskrat. They're bending his little legs and they're rolling on the side and they're doing whatever they can do to get the water out of his body so that he can breathe. And they work on him about 10 minutes and there's no sign of life. So, and it's not a good thing. And they're just about ready to give up. But when they're ready to give up, muskrat spits out this big stream of water and he's alive. And everybody's so happy now. They're all trying to hug the muskrat, right? Because they were so scared of him not making it. So he's alive now. But muskrat just elbows everybody out of the way and he holds up his paw. And in his paw, he had a few specks of dirt. So underneath the water, what the owl was talking about was dirt. And the muskrat made it. He almost died, but he made it. So at this point now, Sky Woman's instincts kick in and she says, I'll take that dirt. I think I know what to do with it. And so Sky Woman takes the dirt and she starts to spread it out on the back of the turtle, right? And this is magic dirt. And this dirt keeps growing and growing and growing. And very quickly, Sky Woman can stand up on this magic dirt. And so she starts to do the round dance, which is a dance that's still done in ceremony today. And this dirt continues to spread out. So in our culture, the Haudenosaunee culture, that is a story about the beginning of what we know as Turtle Island, because this dirt that she finds keeps growing and growing, right? And that's, again, use your imagination on that. And there are many versions of the story, like I had mentioned earlier. One of the versions has that when Sky Woman came down, she had something in her pocket called the Three Sisters. I'm going to leave that out for a question for you. We can get to that after. What are the Three Sisters? And it also has been said that when Sky Woman came down, she was actually pregnant and she gave birth. Now, one of the stories has that Sky Woman gave birth to a child, a girl child. The child grew up, became an adult, all the while this land was still growing, very, very plain land. And Sky Woman taught her daughter about all the ceremonies and how beautiful it was in the sky world. And a lot of magical things started to happen. And it's said that Sky Woman's child, when she became an adult, became pregnant as well. And there's stories about the west wind and how she became pregnant. And it's just a really amazing stories. And she has two children. Some say twins, some say children at different times. Again, different versions of the story, but she had two children. And as they grow up, so now you have Sky Woman, her daughter, and their two children. And so now Sky Woman is a grandma. Now, as they grow up, Sky Woman continues to get older. And it was said that when it was her time to go to the spirit world, Sky Woman chose to become Grandmother Moon. So in our culture, that's why we call the moon Grandmother Moon. And Sky Woman chose to become Grandmother Moon so that she could watch over her children. Anywhere they went, Grandmother Moon was there, right? Now, as Sky Woman's grandchildren, they grew up as well in this land, and this land kept growing very plainly, though. They heard all the stories from their mother, how beautiful Sky World was, about the trees and the water and the mountains. And as they got older, they realized they had special abilities, powers, if you will, right? and they did have the ability to create trees. They could create mountains, and there's stories about that when they were very competitive growing up, very competitive, but they did have special abilities. And once they had these special abilities, they were so competitive that they wouldn't let each other create these special things in this new world. And so time went by, and nothing was getting done, and they realized how silly that was. So but it was a silly thing, but they also didn't want to let the other sibling create anything either. So what they decided to do was to play games. And they said, okay, we'll play these games, and the winner of these games gets to create whatever it is they want in this new world. And so the first game they played was called a peach pit game. And if you know what peaches are, you know that inside of the peach is a pit or a seed, and they're quite big. And so what they did is they took out like 9 seeds or pits of the peach, and they dried them. And then after they were dry, they burnt one side of the peach pit only on all 9 of them, so that one side was light, one side was dark. And they played the game by putting all the peach pits into a wooden bowl, and they sat down across from each other in the grass. And they took turns dropping this bowl on the ground. And to win the game, all of the peach pits had to turn the same side up, either the light or the dark. And it was a very difficult game to win, right? You drop that down, and they all had to turn the same side up. Very difficult game to win, and nobody won that. Now, I have created a game based off of that peach pit game. And instead of using peach pits, though, I didn't want to use my stinky peach pits, right? And take them into the school. I used rounds of wood. So I've simply just put symbols on rounds of wood. So if you can see that round of wood, it's not very big. It's like similar to a checker with a symbol on one side only, right? And I drew symbols that relate to the culture. Again, a symbol on one side only. And to play the game, if I were in a classroom setting, we'll say we had 25 to 30 kids in a classroom, I would make 3 even teams. So it'd be 3 groups, all even teams. And each team or each group would get 5 rounds of wood. Each of these woods with a symbol on one side only, right? Symbol on one side only. Each player in that group would get 1 turn. And 1 turn is simply just dropping the rounds of wood. And you could drop them on the floor, on a table. I think we even used I've used a basin before and dropped them in there. Each person on the team would get 1 turn. So you drop the rounds of wood down, and you count the symbols that land up. So hi Sharon, if I dropped it and there was no symbol, that's no point. If I drop it and there is a symbol, that's 1 point. So you have 5 rounds of wood. You want to see how many symbols land upright on those rounds of wood. Every person on that team would get a turn, and you would add your score up as you go. And out of the 3 teams, we'd have a winner. And there are different versions of the game. I like to be throwing little competitions in there as well. But it's a really, really fun, simple game. I used rounds of wood and a symbol on one side based off of the peach pit game in our culture. Now, that was a game that the siblings played, and nobody won that game, right? Nobody won that game. So they went on to play this game here. Knock anything down. This game here. You know this game as lacrosse, right? This game is an ancient game. We're Six Nations people. We've been playing this game since the beginning of time, right? We did not call it lacrosse. That's actually a French word. Each of the Six Nations has their own word for this game. In my language, we say Dewa Oladen. Dewa Oladen. Dewa Oladen talks about the weaving or the spider's web inside a curved piece of wood. So Dewa Oladen is the Mohawk word for lacrosse, or one of the Mohawk words for lacrosse. Traditionally, we played the game for a few different reasons. One of them was said to settle an argument or a dispute. So instead of physically fighting, we could agree to play a game of lacrosse. Whoever won the game won the argument. We also call this a medicine game. And one of the best ways I can explain it is it's good medicine. And it's my belief, and it's a cultural belief, that anything you do that brings joy to your life is good medicine. And that's important. That good medicine is important because life can be hard. Every one of us, each and every one of us needs something that brings us joy, something that nobody makes us do, not your teachers, not your parents, something that you love to do on your own that brings you joy. It's called good medicine. And we all need good medicine in our lives, right? And I think we should look at those things as medicine because it does provide that joy. So when I was younger, my good medicine was playing lacrosse. And I always had a lacrosse stick in my hand. And it did me well. I went on to play lacrosse professionally for many, many years. But now that I'm older and I don't play anymore, my good medicine changed. My good medicine now is growing food. I love to grow food, and that brings me great joy. So again, good medicine is personal to you and something that nobody else, makes you do, and it brings you joy. And then we all have our own good medicine. And lastly, we play the game in ceremony. Every April, when the snow is gone and the rains come, the rain is nature's way to tell Mother Earth it's time to wake up and start a new cycle of life. So every April, we'll play with our traditional sticks, which this one is, to honor the rain or the thunder beings in that new cycle of life. Now, this is a traditional stick. You can see it's got quite a big head on here. We would not have had the white nylon. That's more of a modern product, right? I have some other ones that it's all hide of an animal, but it is a lot smaller than this one. You see it almost fits right inside that one. We were known for the long pocket sticks, right? You can see the one behind me hanging on the wall. Some of them have really long pockets. Those are the types of sticks that we're traditionally known for, the long pocket sticks. And again, a game that is so special to the culture in our community. And not everybody does this, but a lot of the families do. And I know mine does. When babies are born, we're gifted a miniature lacrosse stick. So the first thing we have in our hand is a mini lacrosse stick. When we die and we're buried with our full-size stick as well. Again, my family still does all of this. So a quick story about the beginning of all things and how games are connected to that story, I think is really, really cool. I do have probably 4 or 5 other games as well that are cultural and traditional games to the Six Nations people. They're all wonderful games. One of our favorites is Bone and Toggle. I wanted to quickly show you this if you've never seen it before. It is a stick, that's the toggle, with a piece of hide as a string connected to the bone. And what you want to do is just rock it back and forth. And you want to flop it so the bone lands on the stick. Wonderful game. Mr. Thrasher is an expert at this. And it's a very popular game when we go into the classrooms and the gymnasiums or outdoors, wherever we're doing. Everybody has a blast, and I always work a little competition into it. So again, if I get to see any of you in the future, these are some of the things that we'll be doing, among other things. Now, I've talked a lot. I could keep talking for a few more hours, but I'm going to slow it down there. I know Sherry Ann is going to have possibly some questions for me. So thank you for listening. And if you have any questions, let's have them.